I remember sitting in my car, my knuckles white from gripping the steering wheel. It was 7 p.m. on a Saturday, my only day off that entire month, and I was parked outside a friend's new apartment. I just spent the last 8 hours hauling boxes up 3 flights of stairs, wrestling with furniture I didn't even know how to assemble. Then I smiled through bone deep exhaustion. My friend was thrilled, and me, as I sat in the quiet of my car, this single hot tear of resentment just rolled down my cheek. I hadn't wanted to help. I was just desperate for a day to do nothing. But when she asked, yes, just flew out of my mouth before I could even hear the no screaming in my own head. That moment wasn't just about being tired, it was my breaking point. I realized that my desperate need to be liked, to be seen as helpful and kind, was a cage I had built for myself. For years, my self worth was completely tangled up in how much I could do for other people, and it led me to straight burnout, anxiety, and a feeling like I was losing myself. I didn't even know what I wanted anymore because my entire life was just a reflection of what everyone else needed. If that sounds familiar, if you've ever said yes while your whole body screamed no, if you felt guilty for just wanting a minute to yourself, or if you've worried that if you stop doing for people, they'll stop liking you, then you are in the right place. Because today, I'm not just going to talk about people pleasing, I'm going to share the exact step by step blueprint that took me from that exhausted woman in the car to someone who lives a life that's actually my own. We're talking boundary setting, scripts that really worked, self compassion on tricks that kill the guilt, and the mindset shifts that will let you finally reclaim your life. Hey there, beautiful souls, and welcome back to Cherese Chandell. If you're here with me today, you're in a space dedicated to self improvement, profound mindset shifts, and truly elevating your entire life from the inside out. This is where we learn to grow, to heal, and to align with that highest, most radiant version of yourself. And I am so genuinely grateful you've chosen to spend this sacred time with me. So, what even is people pleasing? We hear the term a lot, but it's so much more than just being nice. Nice people do things for others out of genuine generosity. A people pleaser, on the other hand, has an emotional need to please people, often at their own expense. For me, it was a compulsion. The validation I got from being the helpful one or the reliable one was like a drug. It was how I measured my value as a person. Looking back, I can trace it deep into my childhood. I was a quiet kid in a loud family, and the easiest way to get positive attention and seek, more importantly, to avoid conflict was just to be agreeable. Be easy, be helpful. When kids get praised for being obedient, they learn that pleasing others is the best way to be. That pattern became my survival strategy. It was how I felt safe and how I tried to secure a love that I worried was conditional. Some psychologists call this a fawn response, a reaction to trauma where you appease others to avoid conflict. I wasn't thinking about it like that. Of course, I was just my own automatic setting. Yes, I can help. No, it's not trouble at all. Whatever works for you is fine. As I got older, this pattern got baked into my personality. In friendships, I was always the one going to drive, to host, to listen to the same stories for hours, even when I had something going on of my own. My needs always felt secondary. At work, I took on extra projects without extra pay, stayed late to help, and never ever complained. I thought this made me, a model employee, but in reality, it made me a doormat. People pleasers notoriously struggle to advocate for themselves, which just leads to this vicious cycle of self neglect and self sacrifice. The consequences crept up on me slowly, but they were devastating. First, the emotional exhaustion hit. Constantly putting others first is unbelievably draining. I felt like I was running on a perpetually low battery with no time to recharge because any me time felt selfish. Then came the anxiety. I lived in a constant state of low grade fear of disappointing someone, fear of being seen as selfish, fear of being rejected if I ever dared to say no. This is a core feature of people pleasing. We tie our self worth to what other people think, which leaves us feeling totally insecure and anxious. But the most corrosive part was the resentment. It would just bubble up at the worst times. I'd be at a party I didn't want to be at, smiling and laughing on the outside while a wave of bitterness was washed over me on the inside. They say resentment is the poison you drink, hoping that the other person will die. I was the one saying yes, but I was furious at them for asking. This dynamic is incredibly common. You agree to something by choice, but you feel resentful, which ends up damaging your relationships and your own mental health. My sense of self just started to evaporate. I had spent so much time and energy trying to be what everyone else wanted that I genuinely lost touch with who I was. If a friend asked me where I wanted to go for dinner, my mind would go blank. I just said, I don't mind. Where do you want to go? It wasn't just about dinner, it was about everything, my hobbies, my opinions, my desires. They were all buried under a mountain of accommodations for others. I was a chameleon, changing my colors to fit in, and in the process, I had become invisible to myself. That day in the car wasn't just about being tired. It was the result of years of abandoning myself. I realized that in my desperate attempt to be loved by everyone, I had completely stopped loving myself. That evening, sitting in my car, something snapped. The resentment wasn't just a fleeting feeling anymore. It was a physical weight in my chest, heavy and suffocating. I realized the path I was on was completely unsustainable. I was going to end up sick or bitter or both. In my relationships, the very things I was trying so hard to preserve were becoming less real. How could anyone have an authentic relationship with someone who never showed their true self? The thought that really terrified me was that if I kept living this way, I would spend my entire life not knowing who I am or what I'm capable of. That was a future I just couldn't accept. The fear of staying the same finally became greater than the fear of change. That was the moment I knew something had to break. And it wasn't going to be me anymore. I drove home, and for the first time ever, I didn't answer a non urgent text that came in. I turned my phone off. It felt radical, it felt terrifying, and it felt like the first deep breath of fresh air after years of holding my breath. I decided right then and there that I would learn how to say no. I would learn how to choose myself. I didn't know how yet, but the decision was made. The escape had begun. Before I could even think about saying no to other people, I had to deal with the loudest, most powerful gatekeeper of people pleasing prison: guilt. The second you even consider putting yourself first, and a tidal wave of guilt can crash over you and send you scrambling right back to your old habits. This guilt is so powerful because it's weird into us. It might come from childhood, where we learned our worth was tied to our usefulness. It comes from society, which often praises self sacrifice. And for many of us, it's a deep fear that if we stop pleasing, we'll be rejected or abandoned. We mistake the discomfort of breaking a pattern for a real warning that we've done something wrong. I had to understand a fundamental truth. Guilt is only as useful emotion when you've actually done something wrong. Feeling guilty after you lied to a friend, that's useful. It signals that you've gone against your values. Feeling guilty for needing a night to rest instead of going to that party, that is conditioned, unproductive guilt. It's not a warning sign, it's a growing pain. So, the first, most critical step for me was to stop treating guilt as a fact and start treating it as a feeling to be investigated. I came up with a little two-step process I call my guilt interrogation. Interrogate your guilt, step number one. The next time you feel that pang of guilt for setting a boundary, I want you to stop. Don't give in. Just pause, breathe, and become a detective. Ask yourself these two questions, maybe even out loud. First, have I actually done anything wrong? Be brutally honest. Is declining an invitation morally wrong? Is it needing to rest a character flaw? Is protecting your energy a malicious act? The answer 99.9% of the time is going to be a clear, loud no. You haven't hurt anyone. You haven't violated your core values. You've simply met your own needs. Second, what am I actually afraid of right now? This gets to the real root of it. The guilt is usually just a mask for a deeper fear. And you are afraid that they'll be mad, afraid they'll think you're selfish, afraid they won't like you anymore. Name the fear, just saying to yourself, I'm feeling guilty because I'm afraid my friend will be disappointed. Feels so much more manageable than vague, overwhelming sense of being a bad person. The second part of dismantling guilt is reframing the whole ideal of self care. For years, I saw it as selfish, an indulgence I hadn't earned. The game changing shift was when I started to see self care as a prerequisite for everything else. You've heard the saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. And it's a cliche for a reason, it's profoundly true. When you're exhausted and resentful, you are not the best version of yourself. You're not a good friend, a partner, or employee. Putting yourself first isn't selfish. It is what allows you to show up for others in a way that's genuine and sustainable. I realized my ability to care for others was actually worse when I neglected myself. So I created a mantra. Feel free to borrow it. Whenever the guilt started creeping up, I put a hand on my heart and I'd say, choosing myself is an act of self respect, not selfishness. By caring for myself, I can show up more fully for others. The physical touch is grounding, and saying the words start to forge a new path into your brain. You are actively rewriting the script in your head. It takes time and repetition, but tackling your guilt is the non negotiable first step. Without it, every boundary we try to set will just crumble. Once I started getting a handle on the guilt, I needed a practical toolkit. I needed to know what to actually say when my automatic yes was fighting to get out. Boundaries aren't about building walls to keep people out. They're about building a fence with a gate. You get to decide who and what comes into your space. They're tools that help us feel safe and empowered. Setting boundaries is a skill and a skill it takes practice. You'll probably feel awkward at first, and that's okay. The key is to start small in low stakes situations to build yourself boundary muscles. Here are the exact scripts that I used and still use to protect my peace. Step number 2, master the power of pause. People pleasers often have a lightning fast yes reflex. Your best weapon against that is buying yourself time. You do not have to answer right away. Your new best friend is the phrase, "Let me get back to you." And here's the script. Thanks so much for thinking of me for this. Let me check my calendar and I'll get back to you by the end of the day. Why does this work? This simple sentence is pure gold. It's polite, so it doesn't trigger a fight, but crucially, it breaks the compulsive yes cycle. It gives you space to breathe and actually consider the request. In that pause, you can ask yourself, do I have time, the energy, and most importantly, do I even want to do this? That pause is where you find your power. It's the difference between a reaction and a real choice. A gentle but firm no. The word no can feel like a weapon to a people pleaser. We're terrified it'll hurt someone's feelings. The secret is learning that no is a complete sentence. But if you feel like that's too much at first, you can soften it without weakening it. The key is to be clear and not over explain. Over explaining just gives them an opening to try and solve your problem for you. Here are the scripts that I use for social invites. Thanks so much for the invitation. I won't be able to make it, but I hope you have a great time. For a favor, I appreciate you asking me for help, but I can't take that on right now. For an overall purpose, no thanks. Thank you for thinking of me, but that doesn't work for me. Why they work. Notice what's missing, a long, rambling excuse. You don't need to justify your no. You're not saying, I'm sorry, I can't. An apology implies you did something wrong, which you haven't. You're just stating your capacity. These scripts are warm, polite, and crystal clear. They close the door gently but firmly. Actionable step number 4, setting boundaries on your time and energy. Sometimes it's not about a single yes or no, but about protecting your ongoing resources like your evenings, your emotional energy. This is huge with family and at work. Here are the scripts that I use for at work. I'm available until 5 p.m. each day. After that, I'll get back to your message the next morning. Or when interrupted, I appreciate that, but could you let me finish my thought? It helps me feel heard. With family, I love spending time with y'all, but surprise visits can be tough with my schedule. Could you try to call or text ahead next time so I can plan? Or with unsolicited advice, I appreciate your concern, but I need to figure this out on my own. With friends, I've only got about 20 minutes of listening energy right now before I have to switch gears. Is that okay? This is an advanced move, but it's a game changer for friends who use you as an emotional dumping ground. It shows you care, but also respects your own limits. Why they work. These scripts are proactive. They communicate your limits kindly before you get resentful. They're about what you need, not what the other person is doing wrong. This shifts the focus from blame to self-care, which makes it way easier for the other person to hear. Actionable step number 5, handling pushback and guilt trips. This is a final boss of boundary setting. When you start changing the rules, people will test the new fences. They might act surprised, hurt, or even angry. They might say, "But you always used to," or "I thought I could count on you." This is normal. Your only job is to calmly hold your ground. And here are the scripts that I use. When they say, "You've changed," yes, I have. I'm working on taking better care of myself. When they try to guilt you, I can hear that you're disappointed, but my answer is still no. Please respect my decision. When they demand a reason, I'm not going to discuss it further. You can also just repeat your original boundary like a broken record. "I can't take that on right now." Eventually, they'll get the message. And why this works. Holding a boundary shows you respect yourself. People who genuinely care about you will adjust. They might not love it at first, but they'll respect it. And the people who leave your life because you started having boundaries, they weren't your people to begin with. They were in a relationship with your compliance, not you. This is a tough pill to swallow, but it is so liberating. You're making space for people who love the real you. If these scripts are already giving you a sense of relief, if you're feeling a little of that power coming back, then do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. This journey of reclaiming your life is a marathon, not a sprint. And I'll be here with more tools and support. And let me know in the comments which one of these scripts are you most excited or maybe most nervous to try. Just sharing it makes it real. Rebuilding your self-worth from the inside out. Number 5, setting boundaries is the crucial external work, but it's only half the battle if you don't do the internal work to rebuild the self-worth that people-pleasing destroyed. You'll always feel like an imposter. Your boundaries will feel shaky, and you'll constantly fight the urge to go back to your old ways. For years, my self-worth came from the outside, my praise from being needed from someone else, telling me I was a good person. Real work was learning to generate that feeling from within. This is about shifting your focus from "what do they think of me" to "what do I think of me." Actionable step number 6, practice radical self-compassion. Self-compassion is on the antidote to that harsh inner critic that fuels people-pleasing. For years, my inner voice was brutal. The core idea of self-compassion, pioneered by Dr. Kirsten Neff, is revolutionary. Treat yourself with the same kindness you give to a good friend. When a friend messes up, you don't call them an idiot. You say, "Hey, it's okay. You're human." Self-compassion is just turning that same voice inward. The exercise, the self-compassion break. You can do this anytime you feel overwhelmed or guilty. It has 3 simple steps. 1, acknowledge the pain. Instead of fighting the feeling, just name it. Say to yourself, "This is a moment of suffering," or "Wow, this is really hard right now." This just acknowledges your reality. 2, recognize common humanity. Remind yourself you're not alone. Say suffering is a part of life, or everyone feels this way sometimes. This stops you from feeling so isolated in your struggle. And 3, offer yourself kindness. Now put a hand on your heart or give yourself a gentle hug. That physical touch is important. Then ask yourself, what do I need to hear right now? Maybe it's, may I be kind to myself? Or it's okay to make mistakes? Or am I doing the best I can? And why this works. This practice actually helps calm your nervous system. People pleasing keeps us in a state of fear, a fear of rejection. Self-compassion activates the body's soothing system, the same one that's activated when we feel safe and cared for. Practicing this makes you more resilient to anxiety and self-criticism. Actionable step number 7, the power of intentional affirmations. I know affirmations can feel a little cheesy at first, but they are a powerful tool for rewriting the negative beliefs that keep you stuck. The belief that my worth comes from what I do for others is a deep groove in your brain. Affirmations are how you start to carve a new one. And here are the scripts I use. Don't just pick random ones. Choose affirmations that directly fight your core people-pleasing beliefs. Here are the ones that work for me. My worth is inherent. It's not tied to my productivity or anyone's approval. I am allowed to take up space. My needs are valid and important. It is safe for me to honor myself. I don't need to shrink myself to be loved. And how to use them effectively. Don't just say them once. Weave them into your day. Write one on a sticky note for your mirror. Set a phone reminder. The most powerful method for me was saying them out loud while looking myself in the eye in the mirror. It feels super awkward at first, but it is a direct confrontation with your inner critic. You are consciously choosing a new belief. Actionable step number 8, journaling or self-discovery. Because people pleasers spend so much time tuned into others' needs, we often become total strangers to our own. Journaling is a practice of turning your attention back inward and asking, what do I actually want and need? It's about becoming an expert on yourself again. So here are the journaling prompts. Don't just stare at a blank page. Use these prompts to get reacquainted with yourself. 1, the energy audit. At the end of each day, make 2 columns. What drained my energy today and what gave me energy today. After a week, you'll have a clear, data-driven picture of what's depleting you and what's fulfilling you. This is invaluable information for setting better boundaries. Number 2, the what if prompt. Ask yourself, if I didn't have to worry about anyone else's opinion, what would I do? What would matter? What would you wear? What hobby would you try? Where would you go? What would you say? This gives your true self permission to come out and play. Number 3, the needs and desires list. This one might be the hardest. For a long time, if you asked me what I needed, I draw a blank. Start a running list in your journal titled My Needs. It can be small things. I need 10 minutes of silence when I get home. Or big things like I need a more creative career. Just the act of writing down your needs tells your brain that they matter. These internal practices are what makes the external boundary work. They rebuild your sense of self from the inside out, creating a solid foundation of self-worth that doesn't depend on anyone else's approval. This is how you stop needing to please and start choosing to connect from a place of wholeness. What's it really like to be free? So what does life look like after you escape the people-pleasing prison? It's not about becoming a selfish, uncaring person. That's the biggest fear, but it's a total myth. It's the complete opposite. It's about becoming a more authentic, present, and genuinely loving person. The first thing I noticed was a deep sense of peace. The constant low level anxiety that was the soundtrack to my life for years. There was no more internal war between what I wanted and what I thought I should do. No more simmering resentment. Saying no to the things that drain you creates the space to say a wholehearted yes to the things that light you up. My relationships transformed, and yes, some people did drift away. The friends who only called when they needed a favor, the colleague who took advantage of me. They didn't like the new bounded me. Well, that stung for a minute. It was ultimately a cleansing process. It made room for people who valued me for who I am, not for what I could do for them. My true friendships became deeper and more honest. When I do something for someone now, it's because I genuinely want to. That energy is completely different from the energy of obligation. It's the difference between a gift and a tax. My energy levels skyrocketed, and I realized how much of my exhaustion had been emotional. The mental load of managing everyone else's expectations was immense. When I put that burden down, I suddenly had all this energy to pour back into my own life, my health, my hobbies, my dreams. Most importantly, I started to like myself again. I began to trust myself. Every time I set a boundary, every time I honored my own needs, I sent a message to the deepest part of me. You matter. I've got your back. Rebuilding that self trust is the ultimate reward. It's the feeling of coming home to yourself after being away for a very long time. This journey isn't about being perfect. There are still days when the old guilt creeps in. There are still moments when setting a boundary feels hard. But the difference is that now I have the tools, I have the awareness, and I have the unwavering belief that my peace is worth protecting. Healing isn't about being perfect, it's about practicing over and over and over again. If you've stayed with me this long, it's because some part of my story is your story too. The exhaustion, the resentment, the feelings of being lost. I see you, but I want you to hear me when I say this. You do not have to live that way forever. Escaping the people pleasing trap isn't a fantasy. It is a skill you can learn, a practice you can build, and a freedom you absolutely deserve. It starts by questioning all the guilt. It's fortified by the practical work of setting clear boundaries with simple scripts. And it becomes a permanent part of you when you do the deep internal work of rebuilding your self worth. Your life is your own. It is not meant to be a performance for someone else's approval. Your needs are valid. Your voice deserves to be heard, and your time is your most precious resource. Putting yourself first isn't selfish. It is the most fundamental act of self-respect. It's the foundation for every healthy relationship and every fulfilling thing you'll ever do. So take one small step today. Choose one script. Try one journaling prompt. Practice one moment of self compassion. That is how it begins, not with a giant leap, but with a single, quiet, revolutionary decision to choose yourself. Thank you so much for being here. If this video resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear this message. It could make all the difference. Don't forget to subscribe for more on living an authentic and empowered life. You are worthy of a life that feels like your own. Go out and reclaim it.